But let me bring in my guest. I am greatly privileged to have a conversation with him, Daniel Lazare. Daniel Lazare is an independent journalist, author, best known as a critic of the U.S. Constitution, American politics and government, social policy in general. He's written several books, including The Frozen Republic, Velvet Coup, and America's Undeclared War. Daniel, how are you doing today, man? You doing all right?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
I am doing fine. You sent me a really good article that I had the opportunity to read, and I thought I put this thing up, but I'm going to put it up one more time just so I can access it and send it, push it to the audience. I knew I sent this thing on Twitter. Journal of Marxist Theory, and you said why Trump's not a fascist and why it matters. And I guess the reason why this is relevant is because a lot of people call him a fascist. They say he's a fascist. He's everything but a child of God. But fascism was one of the first things that come up when they're talking about him, even when they ran a race against him. They said he's going to stick Liz Cheney up against the wall and shoot her in the head. Journalists was like, oh my God, he's going to get rid of our ability to do news, if that's what they call it. Go through the basic argument in this article, and I want to take parts of the article just as I read through it. Give me your take on the main thesis.
Well, the main thesis is that, everyone is throwing the F word around. Everyone is calling Trump a fascist. Leftists, rightists, Liz Cheney, of all people, is calling Trump a fascist. And I think it's actually a smokescreen. I think, first of all, historically, Trump is not a fascist. Fascism was a movement that arose in the waning days of World War I during a period of revolutionary upsurge when countries like Hungary, Russia, obviously, Italy, even the US were gripped by revolutionary movements. And fascism was a last-ditch effort to overthrow these movements, to suppress them, and to reestablish order. But it wasn't just a conservative order. It was a order of the revolutionary right, a right-wing revolutionary movement that was as hostile to old-fashioned conservatives as it was to the radical left. So Mussolini was the best example in the 1920s, and he was a radical. He extolled violence. He celebrated violence. He had thousands of supporters under arms in his control. He was determined to create a totalitarian state, and to a great extent, he did. Hitler, of course, was even more extreme. I think the Nazis had 400,000 people in arms by 1933, even before the seizure of power. These were vast armies in the streets, which were devoted to violence, celebrated violence, worshipped violence. And the state they imposed or they created was a totalitarian state in which violence, war, and of course racism and nationalism were celebrated to the utmost. Now, number one, I'm not trying to soft pedal Trump when I say that he is not a fascist. He does not do any of these things. He's flirted with the Proud Boys. He fostered encouraged a rampage on Capitol Hill, but he doesn't have hundreds of thousands of people under arms, and he relies on the traditional organs of the state, the FBI, ICE, the Army, the Marines, etc. He is, the liberals claim that he wants to overthrow the Constitution, but really it's clear that he just wants to use certain parts of the Constitution, namely the imperial presidency, in order to eliminate the few remaining democratic vestiges that are still left in this tired old document. He's in terms of military policy, the guy is erratic, dangerous, foolhardy, etc. And he very well may shortly bomb the Iranian nuclear facility at Fordo. But he doesn't, he clearly doesn't worship war the way that Hitler or Mussolini did. And in fact, he's been kind of skittish on the question of war. He got into a fight with the Houthis and then declared victory and got out after just 30 days. So his record is very different, clearly in a zoological taxonomic sense. He's a different breed of cat. So there's no point, it's like calling a dog a wolf, when in fact a wolf is a very different kind of animal. And when people like Liz Cheney call Trump a fascist, what they're trying to do is to conceal their own contribution to the problem. What they're saying is, they used to call Trump a Russian agent. Now they call him a fascist. And the bottom line is that they regard Trump as un-American, because America is this holy, pure, harmonious state that can do no wrong. It's, Tom Hanks single-handedly defeated fascism on Omaha Beach, if you believe Saving Private Ryan. So America is good, pure, etc. So Trump, whether he's a Russian agent or is a fascist, they're simply calling him un-American. And they're doing so because they want to get themselves back into power. A discredited liberal elite wants to claw its way back into office, and they want to paint Trump as un-American in order to do so. And it's a scam, and the only effect will be to bring back Liz Cheney, and that is the last thing we need. So that's just my point. That's my argument. We don't need to return to the old regime. We need something new, and these broad fronts in which everybody from Liz Cheney to Naomi Klein to who knows who else, sort of join hands and sing "Kumbaya" in order to denounce Trump. It's just a scam, and it's a very conservative scam as well. So that was my argument.
I don't quite see how he's all that different than the other liberal order. He may have his different things that he doesn't like, but it's the same playbook. I mean, like, if you look at what's taking place right now, so you had Joe Biden, who's willing to go to war effectively with Russia. At some point, they were going to tip over. They kept walking to the line. You can't always predict what that line is. And at some point, they were going to cross that line, either with Biden or with Harris. Okay, Trump, for whatever reason, he looks at them and says, hey, we lost that. We're getting rolled. And as I told you last time on the show, as I kept pointing out, the Russians were taking them apart. And that is even more so today. I think you'd agree with me today. I think it's clear today.
Yeah.
Trump seems to have accepted, okay, we're losing that. So I need to freeze that. And while we freeze that, I need to pivot into something else. Oh, I know, Iran. Let's pivot to Iran. And so it seems that he's still functioning from the standpoint of empire. I mean, like, he's still looking at it. He just recognized, okay, we failed rolling the dice on Ukraine. So now we're going to roll the dice on Iran because I think Iran is the weak link. And that's going to be a link that can isolate China and, for that matter, Russia, and make it far easier in order to get back to Russia, or for that matter, go after China. Meaning, this is not a president that is acknowledging multipolarity, something that many of the other people in, let's say, the liberal order decried. Like Liz Cheney would be like, oh my God, I can't believe you're acknowledging multipolarity. Well, just because Trump says it and he continuously lies, again, habitual liars lie. Him saying it is secondary to the fact of whether he's acknowledging it in the way that he acts. And I'm saying in the way that he acts, he's acting in the sense of empire. I may be lying about being okay with multipolarity, but in reality, I am doing the things necessary to maintain American hegemony around the globe, even if it means bringing us to the brink of nuclear war every bit as much as Joe Biden did. Give me a take on that, because it just comes across, he puts out a persona, not anything real in terms of difference. And maybe I'm wrong on this. Maybe you can change my mind on this, but give me your thoughts.
Well, I think there are differences, but the continuities are really striking, especially on Iran. I mean, Obama negotiated the nuclear accord back in 2015, and Trump abandoned it in 2018. But Biden had a chance to go back in 2021, and he didn't do it. I mean, he essentially pursued a Trump policy.
Yeah.
Biden, Trump was extremely belligerent towards China, and Biden was also. So Biden pursued a Trump policy in that, and now Trump is doubling down now that he's back in office.
Mhm.
So yeah, the continuities are really striking. I mean, certainly there's a difference with regard to Russia, but we don't know how that'll play out and what will happen in the end. But I agree. I mean, the difference is that Biden was committed to NATO, whereas Trump is obviously very hostile to NATO. So that's really an important change. But it doesn't mean that make Trump any more or less warlike than Biden. In fact, it's hard to beat the Democratic Party neocons when it comes to warmongering. And Trump is bad, but I don't see him as in any way, especially bad or bad to a different degree. I see him as really essentially the same. Domestically, it's different though. Domestically,
Yeah.
there's no doubt that Trump is, I don't know, whether he's crossed over or not by now is unclear, but he clearly is heading towards a straight out dictatorship. I think that's obvious. The war on the immigrants is going to destroy democracy, and the war against pro-immigrant protesters will get ferocious. So real repression, in contrast to what we saw during the Biden years. But real repression is coming down. So in that way, he is different, and the danger he poses is very serious. But again, it's just not the same as fascism.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I thought it was illegal to put U.S. troops on American soil.
The law, I wish the law was always crystal clear, but it's not. There's a great deal of ambiguity. Was it yesterday or today? Bernie Sanders issued a statement saying the Constitution is crystal clear that only Congress can declare war. It's not crystal clear. And in fact, presidents have taken unilateral military action on their own literally hundreds of times. Thomas Jefferson, started it was in 1803 when he went to war against the Barbary pirates, and without congressional authorization. And Jefferson is one of the founders of this country. So even though Bernie Sanders says the law is clear, the law really is not clear, and so therefore it's not clear if it's illegal to put troops on U.S. soil, and you can't rely on the law to defend you against those kinds of abuses.
Ugh, that's terrifying. I know what I mean by that is
that will do it.
Yeah, I guess what I mean, built into that phrase, the point of you can't rely on the law to do it. These things are just written down. If nobody backs it, it doesn't really matter. They're just written down. Where do you think this is going to go with the immigration thing? I mean, the fact that he's willing to put troops on the ground and we are 4 months in, it's like buckle up.
Yeah, it's going to get really, really bad. I think that that there's going to be the Marines will open up with live ammo at some point. Frankly, these protests can only look at the Trump is aiming to round up 3,000 people a day. That is extra. Then you're tearing people out of their communities, away from their families, away from their friends and coworkers. It's wrenching. It's painful, and that can only lead to ever greater protests in the streets. And if Trump wants to meet those protests with armed repression, well, we sort of know what'll happen next. And the country is in a state of emergency, and the emergency will deepen.
Especially if there's a war, correct?
Especially
I mean, meaning I was looking at the polling on the conflict. Well, I guess there's a few things. One, the polling on his quote unquote big beautiful bill that that is atrocious. But also, when you're looking at what do people think about going to war with Iran? Well, you get right here 60% to 16% say no. That is a hell of a skew. That is a hell of a skew. And then even among Democrats, 65%, among independents, 61% among independents. And among Republicans, 53%, meaning he even lost Republicans on this. These are a section of his base. Look, the number of cultists that are backing Trump, those will probably not necessarily break away from him. But this is not indicative of a good policy, especially when you're already in the middle of a political firestorm with a bill that the majority of the public hates and with the immigration thing that the public hates. I mean, it seems like we're in for a hell of a rough ride where the government is going to be effectively fighting. I guess I've already asked this question, but I guess I'm trying to nail down the significance of it because I don't think it's minor. The fact that you have military on the ground at the start of protests against Trump means he is trying to have a fight right off the bat with the public of trying to pacify opposition to what he is doing. And this is not even everything hitting the fan yet in regards to opposition to what he's doing. This is only one element or one item, which is immigration. Where does the public go with this?
Well, I don't think Trump is trying to pacify anybody. I think he's trying to stir people up. I think he's a confrontationalist. But we don't know how Iran will play out. If it's just one 30,000-pound bomb dropped from a B-2 at 50,000 feet, and if it does the trick, I think I'm pretty confident the public will applaud.
Daniel, I've been right about all of this. I think you're wrong on this. I have nailed this the entire way through. Iran is not going to take, their public is not going to accept anything coming out of the U.S. like that.
Oh, I meant the U.S. public, not the Iranian public.
Oh, okay.
I think Americans will probably applaud. I think Iranians will be appalled and furious at the weakness and incompetence of their own government. One bunker buster could conceivably lead to the overthrow of the Iranian regime, which the U.S. would be delighted to see. I don't know.
Man, I still disagree with you. I put it to you this way. I was watching protests that were taking place. The protests weren't against the Iranian government. I saw liberals, typically people who would be against their government in Iran, with hair flowing in the wind, screaming, "We need to get a nuclear bomb, and we need one now."
I saw that clip.
Yeah. My point is, go ahead.
I saw that clip, but it was one person. I also saw clips of traffic jams caused by ordinary Iranians fleeing Tehran to avoid the bombing.
Some of that stuff is AI. If you ask Grok, because I've gotten caught with that too. If you ask Grok, "Hey Grok, is this real?" And Grok will usually point out where this is coming from, and oftentimes it's not coming from the source that they claim. My point is,
yeah, I'm sorry.
Well, no, I was just going to say, if they do that, they will respond. And if there are 50,000, 20,000 dead Americans that are coming back in body bags, is America really still going to applaud Donald Trump for dropping and attacking a country unprovoked?
Okay, then it depends on what the balance of forces are and how this conflict plays out. I think the Iranian regime is very weak, and I think that its military capability is very low, and that the Iranian people are very unhappy with that. And so, therefore, I think that the effect of a bunker buster attack on the Fordo underground nuclear plant will have devastating political consequences for Iran itself, and could very well lead to the toppling of what I regard as a very unpopular regime. But I could be wrong. It's happened before, believe it or not. And if the
Ukraine.
if the Iranians put up a stiff resistance, and if that resistance hits the U.S. and if the U.S. finds itself in serious military trouble, then you're correct. Americans don't want a war in the Middle East. They're tired of war, and if this turns into a bloody slog, then Trump is indeed in big trouble. But if it turns into a bloody slog, Trump will be under pressure to respond even more radically. So therefore, Americans can find themselves dragged into a much worse conflict than they ever counted on.
That's true.
I don't think that will happen, but I am betting on the opposite. But we can see what the options are, and we'll just have to wait and see how this plays out.
We will see how this plays out, and I've been making. God, I don't. It sucks to say this. I am not of mind that they are as weak as you think they are, or as weak as the Israelis thought they were, or that the Russians were as weak as many people thought they were. I think we have a tendency to over-evaluate our own strength and under-evaluate the strength of people who we don't like based on a certain point of view. And we are often surprised by the level of resistance that they put up. Israel full well believed that they were going to be able to pacify Iran. And I can show you images where Israel, Tel Aviv, Haifa, many of these places look like Gaza today, with these guys fighting over gas because their gas has effectively been blown up. They've been living in bunkers for the last several days. If it was true that Iran was that weak, Israel wouldn't be begging the United States to get involved in a way that they've been begging them within 24 hours of a premeditated, unprovoked attack. So we will see.
Let me just be clear about Russia. I mean, there's no doubt that the U.S. and its allies underestimated Russia's capability. And there is no doubt that Russia will prevail in the end. I mean, a war like this, like the one in the Ukraine, is basically an industrial, contest.
It is.
Russia has, what does it have? It's like 4 times the population, 13 times the GDP, et cetera, et cetera. And there's no doubt that brute force will prevail at the end. And there's also no doubt now that the Russian offensive is picking up steam, and that the balance of power is tipping ever more decisively in Moscow's favor. There's no doubt about that at all. In the case of Iran versus Israel, I think that even though Iran is some 8 times larger, the same economic and military imbalance holds. Iran's per capita GDP, I think, is 8 times less than that of Israel. The Israeli war machine is a well-proven, device. It is
against women and children.
It should not be underestimated. I think that Israel controls the skies in this latest conflict. I think that Israel is a much stronger state than Iran is. I think the Iranian government is deeply unpopular with its own people. Its own people lack faith in the mullah's government. And so I see that as a sign of weakness. So therefore, while for the same reason that I think that the balance of power lies in Russia's favor, I think the balance of power lies in Israel's favor. And as far as American intervention goes, look, I mean, for the last 45 years, American presidents, since Jimmy Carter unveiled the so-called Carter Doctrine in January 1980, establishing a monopoly of control over the Persian Gulf has been a top U.S.
policy. Yeah.
And if one bunker buster bomb is enough to do it, then I think that Trump will be unable to resist the temptation, which is why I think he will go in. I mean, it will mean that he will have accomplished what Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan, George W. Bush, I'm trying to remember what they are, Barack Obama, et cetera, were unable to accomplish. And I think that's what Trump wants to do. He wants a neat, clean, decisive ending to this conflict.
Daniel, what evidence? Go ahead.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
he may get.
I get it. Okay. What evidence do you have that Israel has a dominant military, short of shooting kids in the back or women and children and starving people? What wars have this modern Israel fought? They're in a proper war now, and they don't have control of their skies. Iran has air dominance over them. I've been watching this war for the last several days as it's been taking place. And again, I would like to point out that, not brutally, by the way, that when we had the conversation about what was taking place in Ukraine, you had a similar point of view that this is a stalemate, they're not moving. And as I kept pointing out to you, that is not the case. They were getting rolled, and it was clear that they were getting rolled. And I'm saying the same thing is true here. Israel does not have dominance over their own skies. They have drones flying, and they can do air sorties. I agree with you. And they can hit Iranian places. But you're talking about a country of 8 million people versus a country 3 times the size of Iraq with 80 million people that can accept a lot more damage in comparison to the willpower of Israelis, who is not used to being under this level of bombardment and this level of just brutality, versus a country that has fought a modern war with Iraq, that has dealt with that level of casualties, even chemical weapon strikes. And if I'm being blunt, has watched them commit just genocide, with meaning a certain amount of they've earned this. I don't view these things as the same. I agree with you that the U.S. is going to get involved, but the U.S. was already involved. This was never something that was launched by the Israelis by themselves. This was something that the United States, as you point out, this was U.S. policy, regardless of the president. I don't buy this premise. They may tell Trump that, hey, a bunker buster would do it. But I would wager to you that they also told Trump Israel can do it on their own. Meaning they may tell the president anything because he's not that bright. And the president may agree with him and believe him because he's not that bright. But that is secondary to getting bogged down into a war that you can't extricate yourself from when they respond to what you do. It's the response part that I think you're leaving out. You think that they dropping one bomb is going to be the end of it. If you remember, when Israel first attacked, Trump was crowing, "Oh, look at this. This is fantastic." They may come to the bargaining table immediately. Meaning, in his mind, he believed that first unprovoked sucker punch was the end of the war. And we're 4 days in, and Israel is getting pounded day after day after. I can show you the images. I can show you the inability to protect their skies. I can show you all that stuff. I guess I'm saying that is a hell of a risk to assume that one bunker buster is going to do it. And I have no evidence that that's true. And I don't know why you think that's true. That's what I'm trying to get at.
Fine. So first of all, let me say that when we spoke about Ukraine, which I think was in April or May, I'm not sure.
It's like last month.
So that would be May. It was Russian progress had slowed, and it was not clear what was going to happen.
Okay.
So there was a sign of a stalemate, but since then, Russia's progress has resumed, and even maybe picking up, and so therefore there is a sign that that Russia's brute strength is reasserting itself. When we talk about Israel, Israel decimated Hezbollah, essentially knocked it out of the ring, and this is
just be clear, militia. Just the militia.
This was a force that everyone thought was very powerful, a real force to be reckoned with.
It was a militia. They didn't even have air power. They didn't. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So Israel knocked them out of the wing. And Gaza, Israel has leveled Gaza. Yes, Hamas fighters are still underground, but there's no doubt that Israel has imposed a brutal punishment. And in Iran, I think it's clear that the predominance of power is still on the Israeli side. The number of Israeli casualties are far less than Iranian casualties.
That's true.
yes, Iranian missiles are getting through. There's no doubt about it. And the Israeli anti-missile defense system, is effective, but hardly totally effective. And that stuff is getting through, and that explosions are going off and people are dying. But I think that the balance of power is still on the Israeli side, and I expect it to remain there. So it's much like Ukraine. So yes, the Russian offensive had stalled for a while, and we were puzzling and wondering, what's going to happen? Is it going to resume? What's going on here? And then it did resume, because the balance of power again is on Russia's side, and I think the balance of power is on Israel's side. Now, let me just finish. So, so if Trump goes in, if he drops that bunker buster, he's going to do so on the assumption that, in the belief that this will be the knockout blow, the coup de grace. And if that is indeed what it is, if he does take that step, and if his assumption proves to be correct, then the Americans will be very happy. But as you point out, things could go wildly wrong.
That's a hell of a
Yeah. And if Trump is drawn into a deep, nasty slog of a war, Americans will not be happy. And
before I let you go, I have to get one last question in, and this is on Tulsi Gabbard.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated with the Tulsi Gabbard thing. We have about 2 minutes.
Yeah.
When Trump was asked about, they said, well, hey, Trump, Tulsi, your DNI said that they weren't trying to produce nuclear weapons. And Trump said, I don't care what she said. And people took that as, okay, you just threw your DNI under the bus. And I'm super curious, what should she do in this situation? I mean, if indeed she's behind the scenes trying to fight the good fight, where she's trying to, they said at some point she was doing like a coloring book for the president because he doesn't like to read, or something to that effect. It was something weird, right? What should she do with this? Or is there anything she could do in this situation? Is it resign? A lot of people are saying she should resign in protests. Give me your thoughts on this, and this could be the closing.
That would be the honorable thing to do. If war does break out, and if she, and if it breaks out despite her recommendations not to take that step, then resigning would be the honorable thing to do. I'm not a Tulsi. Tulsi Gabbard is a fascinating person, but I don't worship at the Tulsi shrine. But if she I believe she was correct when she said that Iran was far from a nuclear bomb. And if Trump ignores her advice, just casually tosses it aside, then resigning would be the honorable thing to do. Otherwise, she'll be dragged into a conflict that she warned against.
And doesn't believe him.
Yeah.
Daniel Lazare, my man, thank you for this, Daniel. I'm arguing with you because I appreciate the argument. And I like having somebody to push back against my thoughts.
These are important issues, very important issues.
Yeah. And I don't want to be too certain on my point of view because that leads down bad paths. So I do like the pushback and forth on this, as opposed to having an echo chamber on this one. So I really appreciate this. Yeah. Daniel Lazare, he is independent journalist, author, best known as a critic of the U.S. Constitution, American politics, government, and social policy in general. He has written several books, including The Frozen Empire, America's Undeclared War. You can find Daniel on X at DH Lazare. You can also find him at Permanent Revolution. For some reason, Twitter's not taking this article. Is that normal?
No, it's not normal, and I will certainly look into that.
Okay, I will try to put it up again, and maybe it's something I'm doing wrong. Okay. But you can find him at right here, this one is called Forum, but permanentrevolution.org. Definitely check out his article. It's a really good one. Thank you for this, man. I really appreciate it. You be safe, okay?
Thank you.
All right.